Hi, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. We're going to start doing a little bit shorter format as of today with 30-minute podcast episodes. We hope you enjoy it. This one is going to be season 7, episode 11?
12.
12, episode 12. I'm stuck in yesterday. Come at the present time, Jonathan. And this one is going to be raising your children in Scientology. This should pique some interest. So, why wouldn't you why would you raise your children as independent Scientologists?
Well, not
Well,
right, because
using
you
Scientology as the subject, let's put
technically,
it that way.
well, right, correct. You technically were raised in Scientology, right?
Yeah, I was raised as a Scientologist from the age of 2.5.
Okay, got it. Well, tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, my dad got a ticket at the local community college, Maple Woods Community College in Kansas City North, for a lecture. And he went to the lecture and went and did a communications course, loved the lecture. And that was that. And then started doing book one and then learned his academy levels and then standard Dianetics, then his academy levels. We moved from Kansas City to Los Angeles, Los Angeles to Kansas City, Kansas City to Los Angeles, Los Angeles to Kansas City between the years of 1975 and 1978.
Hmm.
Uh, as a 2.5-year old, I was think it was about 3.5. I told my dad some past life things that had occurred for me, and he acknowledged me. He didn't invalidate me. He didn't evaluate for me. Kept his auditor's code in and made notes of it so that he could tell me later what I said when I got older. Um, it could have been a better childhood. There was a lot of restimulation for him on being audited past clear, and some of it got taken out on me, I think. Um, did I have an awful childhood? No, no, by any means. It was a far better childhood. I had 3 square meals, hot meals, good clothes, braces. Um, but the thing that was missing for me is that he never got any admin training. I never heard the word ethics conditions once until I was 18 and I was getting trained at Flag.
Mm.
Um, I didn't hear the word PTS or PTSness until 1984, 1985, when he wrote a disconnect letter to my aunt, great aunt, his mom's sister, obviously. And then my dad got restimulated on something one night. An ambulance came to get him and he was taken to the hospital. And I guess by modern definitions outside of Scientology, it was a panic attack. He got keyed in on
Mm.
something and then shortly thereafter went to LA to get some PTS handlings and things like that because of this aunt that was psychotic when she needed to be. From my standpoint as an auditor now, but the being raised as a Scientology child, the thing for me that stands out the most beyond anything my parents did or didn't do is my experience with others my age. And that was
Mm.
one of those things where I was consistently the black sheep. There's a song by the
You
Canadian,
mean in your peer groups?
yeah, in my peer group. There's a
Okay.
there's a there's a there's a song by the Canadian progressive rock group Rush. Um, Rush being my favorite band. Neil Peart wrote a song named Subdivisions that
Hmm.
talks about being being pushed with all of the things that the peer pressure and everything in the peer group, and that was the song that really defined things for me because it was I mean, just such a great wordsmith, in the basement bars, in the backs of cars, be cool or be cast out. I was not cool. And I saw things differently. I believed in past lives. I knew about past lives. Um, I spoke to other people about Scientology. I had my college history teacher in high school harass me about being a Scientologist several times. Now, here's an interesting thing,
Hmm.
and you're not going to believe this. My freshman year social studies teacher came up to me. This happened twice. And this both my freshman years, because I was very overt about being a Scientologist. He came up to me and he said, tell your dad I said hi and that I remember him from past lives. Just out of the blue.
Okay.
Just out of the blue.
How old were you?
I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And I, I I don't know how it came up, but I mean, I wasn't, I don't even remember mentioning it I think it was, what is it? What is it? What do they call it? It was history class, basically, social studies.
Yeah, civic, social studies, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. And this
Economics.
is this is even stranger. And then my Mr. Cobb, my algebra one teacher, who was also the high school football coach and tough as nails, and you didn't put up with any bullshit in his class and everything. And I mean, just bam, tone 40, really good intention. He had that what I call the black woman tone 40. When he got on to somebody else, it just
Yes.
shook you to your soul kind of thing, even though they
Right.
weren't talking to you, it was just bam. Yeah, and
Right.
then and you thought, God damn, I will never ever play football. So he grabs me. I'm stepping out of the room, and he says, I want you to tell your dad I remember him, and we were in Egypt together, and that I said hi.
Okay. And what
All
did you
right.
do? Like with that, were these people just in your school, or were they also Scientologists in your school?
No, they
Like,
weren't. Neither one of them were Scientologists. That's the thing. Neither one of them went to the org in Kansas City. I don't even remember mentioning anything to him about it. I don't.
uh-huh.
And he just grabbed me by the shoulder, real nice and everything, and told me to tell my dad this. And my dad said, "Really?"
Wow.
And I'm
Well,
like,
that was very,
"Yeah." So those were the two strange things that happened that had nothing to do. I mean, there's no way to explain it. Um,
right.
but in high school, I was always given all kinds of shit and teased on the bus and all that stuff, and because of my viewpoints, and I never ever ever felt like I fit in. I was a musician, and I took a lot of art classes and all that stuff, and I basically finished high school in my by the end of my junior year. I had enough credits that I was pretty much a professional teacher's assistant my senior year.
Mm,
And I had a full-time job and all that stuff. But it was very unpleasant for me because there wasn't anybody with my reality except these two teachers that after my freshman year, I never saw them again. I didn't,
right.
didn't, they were in different parts of the high school and stuff like that. And I didn't go to the org until 1984, summer of 1984. And there was one guy running the org after the whole mission holders conference destroyed the mission there. And then they turned it into the org. And this one guy was the only one working there. And it was on Main Street. And I mentioned another podcast. He had to shoo the prostitutes off the front steps with a broom and stuff like that. But that was the primary thing, is that there was no reality with anybody that I went to school with. When I was in elementary in Hollywood, I had the opportunity to go to Apple School, which is a Scientology based,
Oh,
study.
okay.
Never got to go there. It was too much. Supposed to have
Hmm.
another teacher who was going to work with me after school and everything like that. She got in a car accident. She was going to teach me ceramics and teach me play pottery wheels and piano and all this stuff never happened. And I remember with my dad, he was getting standard Dianetics at the time, and I from a gal who owned the old Borax King's house. It's a mansion up in the Hollywood Hills, and I've looked it up online and everything, and yep, it's still there. And I would sit outside and play around in a grotto that was similar to what the Playboy Mansion has, but it was all defunct
Hmm.
and everything, and I met these really cool people who treated me like an adult. They didn't treat me like a kid, and I was in second grade at the time. So it, the sum of all of this is basically it wasn't any fun not to have anybody else with similar realities, but it was far from, and I didn't have any brothers and sisters, so it was far from awful. But you either want to have brothers and sisters who have the same viewpoint, or you want to be around other people of your own peer group that you can live with, because there wasn't any ARC, and the age difference between my parents and the things that my dad told me. I mean, it was a lot of it was real um whole tracky and stuff like that. But he never, I mean, it was never on the OT level, so he never told me anything about that or anything. So
Hmm.
that's my story.
Well, I got it. It is very interesting. Very interesting because I think, even though I technically wasn't raised Scientologist, I was a past life Scientologist. And
Yeah,
I
so was I. I
came,
forgot to mention that.
yeah, and I came with some stuff. Okay.
Hmm.
And so when you mentioned about being a black sheep, I for me, I was never one to want to fit in. Like that's just kind of wasn't my thing. Like I didn't want to fit in.
Yeah.
So I never sought the cool factor. I created, interestingly enough, my own groups.
Hmm.
And I remember even when I was very young, um, when I would go into the school, I knew I wasn't going to be the popular kid because they had like Cameron Gallimore and these are people. I hope they never listen to this podcast, but there are people who clearly I knew going in, these are the popular kids. And from Alabama, so I grew up in the, conservative South or whatever. And so what I would do is I would create my own groups. And we ended up having our own condition of power. And we called it that. We didn't call it the condition of power. We just called it power. Like we had our own power, right?
Hmm.
And it was really, really interesting how I made that every school I went to, I made that kind of decision that I'm going to create my own group and we're going to be at power like that. And
Right.
so I actually um, positioned this one girl in my group to run for like a class president or whatever, whatever. And like I was like, no, you're gonna run for class president and you're gonna get elected. And like I actually just like moved her into this station because I wanted one of my people in power,
Right.
right? So for me, it was again being raised Jehovah's Witness, but having the knowledge that I had, I was very, very tone 40 in the way I showed up. And I was very much like that. LRH has something to say in Child Dianetics, was published in 1951. And he talks about how, you enjoy life and you're happy. Let me read it to you. It says, you're well and enjoy life because you aren't owned. Your American forefathers fought slavery twice, 1776 and 1861. You couldn't enjoy life if you were shepherded and owned. You'd revolt. And if your revolt was quenched, you turn into a subversive. And that's what you make out of your children when you own, manage, and control them, right? So I was that. So I was very owned, very managed, and very controlled in the conservative South um, Christian household. And so I became quite subversive revolt. And he said that that's what your children will become, a subversive revolt.
Yep. and
And
and that's pretty common.
oh, absolutely, it was. Absolutely. Oh, it is. One of my favorite, you talked about, I don't know much about Rush, the band, but one of my favorite in high school, middle school and high school was Marilyn Manson.
Hmm.
And I really, really love that song, 1996 by Marilyn Manson.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
because it talked about like the whole like Columbine thing, and he was speaking against how they were trying to blame him for all that stuff. And Disposable Teens, there was another one, Disposable Teens, two really good songs by him. But I'm saying all this to say is that growing up in a religion that is very regimented, it can put you in a position where you don't feel like you're free. Now, for me, I always felt free, even though my mother tried to create that sense of control. I always felt free to do, right?
Right.
And free to be. It wasn't until I would say probably ninth grade, maybe kind of around where you were, is when I really started to step into my OT abilities and my theta perceptions and stuff like that. And it really became a thing for me that I was able to do things and be perceive of things that other people weren't hadn't been rehabilitated on,
Hmm.
right? And so growing up that way, when I became a parent later on, I knew that I wanted to give my son the ability to choose, number one, um, with giving him what I knew. So what I would do is I would weave into his education Scientology.
Right.
So of course he would go to school on the weekends. He would have one course period on the weekends, and so that's fine. And then during the week, I think we had a course on Wednesday and Saturday. No, Wednesday and Sunday was course period. And so he would go to course Wednesday evening and then on Sunday, and he would get his Scientology in, and then we would have him like tell us how he would apply it. Okay, so what you learn, how can you apply that or whatever? So in the course of a very short period of time, he was able to really, really improve in school. So his grades improved dramatically. I was extremely proud when he was able to graduate high school because before he had been so blown from course, when it comes to schooling, that he didn't want to finish school. He was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get my GED. I just want to get out, get my GED, and move on, kind of thing. And so it was really good that he was able to kind of get himself um, in a much better place. So I feel that growing up the way I did with what I knew as a past life Scientologist, and then coming back to give the same opportunity to my son to use some tech in his life, it was very, very good for him. Communication courses, those kinds of things really worked. We use self-analysis a lot, and I think LRA said it in Child Dynamics. He said, "That's all you can tell. That's all I can tell you right now. Self-analysis is your best pattern of processing to use on a child. Only you ask him the questions."
Right.
And you'll have a happy house.
Right.
So we did use self-analysis a lot, and it was pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good gradient for kids. I remember my dad doing touch assists on me. I got scalded with hot
Yep.
water once one winter doing something in the garage. Locationals. He taught me how to change the shape. I know this is going to sound strange to people, but it's true. Change the shape of clouds. He would say, look at that cloud there. And he would say, okay, I'm going to turn it into Mickey Mouse. And he'd turn it into Mickey Mouse. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? And he says, well, you just postulate it because it doesn't have a lot of density and it's water vapor. And I was really into weather and meteorology and stuff like that. And so we would go out and we
Nice.
would do that together as a father and son and stuff and make designs in the clouds. And that was one of those OT. I mean, some people would say OT abilities, but it's just something a Thetan can do is they can manipulate water vapor and turn it into shapes and stuff like that. So that was my first introduction into changing the physical universe type of a
So
thing.
this is so crazy.
Huh?
Hold on a second. Let me tell you why this is crazy. Because I never heard anybody else say that. So what we used to do is we used to blot out the sun. So
Mm-hmm.
I would make Micah, my son, I would make Micah go out if he and he's like, oh my God, it's so hot outside. Oh. and he wants to come inside in the air conditioner. And I was like, go outside and just blot out the sun then. And
Hmm.
so he would be outside and he would raise his hands and he would be moving the clouds and he would blot out the sun. And then him and his friends would go play football or something like that in the backyard.
Hmm.
And so this was a real thing. Like we taught our kids to manipulate weather.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I love it.
that's one of the things that you can do, and I think that the underlying theme on this is, there's a lot of good to be had with it, but you need to be educated on it. And there's a lot of, I mean, child dynamics has all kinds of stuff for kids, and
Mhm.
learning touch assists and locationals and word clearing. I mean, my dad taught me word clearing and things like that, which helped in school tremendously. I mean, there's so many different pieces of tech that you can teach a kid, but understanding affinity, reality, communication, knowledge, responsibility, and
Yeah.
control, KRC triangle, all these basic
Communication
things.
formula.
Yeah, acknowledgments, TRs. That was one of the big
Oh,
things,
yes.
and it really made a big difference. I remember when I went to middle school and I was in speech class. It was the only A+ class I ever got as a grade, because I had done the comm course and my TRs were in, and I would go up and I would speak, and I would, it was basically everything you needed to do was just using the training regimens in Scientology's communication course. And that
Mm-hmm.
really made a big difference with me with people. And I would go out and mow. I started going out and mowing lawns at the age of 7 for hire,
Yep.
because I had the confront to go out and knock on people's doors and say, "Can I mow your lawn for $10?" And I have a weed eater,
Yeah,
and I'll do that for the $10 that you have a weed eater, and that's where I got into sales. And I mean, so you start them early, and you can really give kids a leg up on this whole thing. I don't have any bad experiences being raised as a Scientologist, and now an independent Scientologist, at all, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I put my kids in an independent Scientology too, and then they, while we were still in the church, they went to applied scholastic schools in Clearwater and everything, and all but two of them GED'd out, because they didn't want to go to non-Scientology schools. So they're just
yeah,
like, yeah, I'll just take the GED like yours did. And
yeah.
boom, they were done 2 years before they needed to be done, and off, joining the workforce or starting their own businesses, playing poker professionally. I mean, being nurses. It's just that kind of thing. So, I'm very proud of all of my kids are artists. So, it's never been a bad experience for me, and I would highly recommend it. But get some training so that you can help them out, just like you did.
Right. Yeah, I'll say for me, preparing my son for the world with this kind of technology, spiritual technology, um, it was very important, in my opinion, to do so. Because it's one thing, and we had, a faith practice, and then we had a philosophical practice, applied religious philosophy. And so having him understand our faith practice and then having him use Scientology, you know what I mean? It was
Hmm.
really, really a good, kind of 1-2 punch because I wanted him to have a strong belief system in who he was as a person, as a spiritual being, the whole bit. But I also wanted him to have the know-how, to go throughout this workaday world, to go throughout life, to go throughout these things. So when you mentioned about the cutting grass, my son did the same thing, cutting grass and shoveling snow. We went to Home Depot and bought him a lawnmower, and we bought him the electric kind so he wouldn't have to keep buying gas.
Right.
So we were really smart. And so we bought him the electric kind. So what he would do, he had a long extension cord, and then he would go to people's houses with the extension cord wrapped around his shoulder, and
That's
then
right.
the lawnmower.
Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did. I had a
Okay,
black,
okay,
I had a Black and Decker electric
yep,
lawnmower, and that's what I started. And it was
same what.
orange, Black and Decker
Yep,
orange. And that
same
was my,
orange.
yeah. And I used the shit out of that thing until,
Yes.
it didn't work anymore, which was 10 years later. And with that cord, I'd have two of those 20-foot cords, one on each shoulder.
Right.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and so he would go out. So one weekend he went out and he made about $240.
mhm,
He made about $240. We were living in Maryland, and he was cutting grass. And then he worked the entire weekend. Like I didn't even see him the entire weekend. He would come home and shower, go to bed, whatever. But by and large, he was working, and he made $240 that weekend, and he felt like a king. He felt so able. He felt so productive. He was like, he just felt really, really good.
yeah.
And then what we did was we posted it on social media, and people started then sending him money. Like he was really, really like just so affluent. Like he was
Mhm,
so doing what he needed to do to create for himself. And so when he turned 13, so he started cutting around 11. When he turned 13, he had money saved up. He was doing really, really well for himself as a young person. And I told him no more Christmas gifts at 13.
mhm,
No more Christmas gifts. Instead of Christmas gifts, you get Christmas trips.
mhm.
And so instead of buying him things, we started giving him experiences
Yeah,
for
and
Christmas.
that's very valuable, especially at that age.
Oh, absolutely. So when he would come back from winter break to school and his friends were like, "Oh, I got a new PlayStation game and I got a new sweater or whatever, whatever," he was like, "Oh yeah, I just came back from, Dominican Republic." And he would have pictures with like these Dominican girls and stuff like that. And his friends were like, "Are you kidding me?" You know. And so I'm saying that if you do it right, this is my thought on this. If you do it right, you can really raise some very you can give children some very, very good experiences.
Mhm,
If you do it wrong, where they feel like they're controlled and managed and manipulated into stuff or whatever, whatever, it can create some very bad control, right? The bad control factor. It can create some very bad experiences. I believe that we did it right. I believe that giving them the tech that they need in order to do well in life is very important.
mhm.
And as independent Scientologists, you don't have to put them through the ringer
Yeah,
of being in the corporate modality, right? The corporate church. You don't have to put them through the ringer with that. You can give them some very, very good tech and make it so that we do like in the academy, they have the points. In the
mhm,
academy, we
mhm,
had the same thing.
mhm.
So you get your points and your points count toward your allowance for the week. So show me that you're upstat and you'll get an upstat experience. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, and that's another thing is the upstat and the downstat thing and productivity and work ethic and everything was something that was instilled in me through
Hmm.
through Scientology policy. That was one thing I did omit, and man, it made a huge difference for me in my life because it was always, be honest, always deliver what's promised, always, service, 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 exchange in abundance, exchange, that type of a thing. And if you instill that in a child and get them to understand that, a good product is a good product. You
Hmm.
make good things, whatever that is, that's invaluable. It really is.
Yeah, totally. This is
Well,
good. I'll just say this and I'll be done. I'll encourage you at those who are listening and interested in introducing your children to something that can work for them improving their life condition, whether it be mental health and you want to run them on self-analysis, go into the college, get the book self-analysis. Like whether you want to work them run them on self-analysis, whether you want to do some Dianetics if they've already experienced some trauma and some stuff, if you want to run them on Dianetics,
mm,
go ahead and start to run them on Dianetics. They can take it. Right?
yeah.
They can take it. And then the TRs and objectives, give them some TRs, get them
Hmm.
to know how to be in present time. So, you know how they diagnosing kids left and right with ADHD and all this junk. Like get them some TRs in and they can really be there and
Hmm.
and do what they need to do. And the last thing I'll say as my advice is to teach them about ethics
Yeah.
and conditions.
Hmm.
Like give them what they need and they can work with it.
Yep. And the other thing is the responsibility of leaders policy letter, and the takeaway from that, it's about Simone Bolivar. One of the things that I was taught was is you have to give your children something to do, because if you don't, the game will become get you. And so I was always given something to do, and I always had chores, and that moved into, okay, what game do I want to play? Oh, I can mow lawns, or I can do this, or all these different things. Computers. I got a computer in 1982, learned to program, all that stuff. And you got to give your kids something to do and make it positive. Take those phones away from them. Don't get them started. Don't give them a phone in the first place. Get them to be extroverted. Get them to look at the world instead of be introverted and buy into all of this crazy social stuff that's going on. That would be my best example, is keep them busy, keep them productive, reward them when they're up statistics, and extrovert them always, and be in communication, acknowledge them and treat them like adults, and don't invalidate and don't evaluate them. That's those are my key takeaways for me. But
I love it.
we're a little over 30 minutes, so we're going to bid you folks adieu. We hope you enjoyed the shorter format, and we will see you tomorrow with another podcast. So for Quenton Stroud and myself, have a great day. Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Peace.